The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that buzzes, like something is about to snap, but hasn't yet. The front door was open. Dad's truck was in the driveway. The back gate, where Mom's flowers usually bloomed, was trampled, like someone had stormed through. I stepped inside. No TV, no smell of dinner, just the sound of my mom sobbing in the kitchen, so soft I almost missed it. I called out, "Mom?" Nothing. Then I saw him. My father, Mark Thompson, standing in the foyer, wearing his black jacket, holding a leather duffel, the same one he used when he traveled for work, but he wasn't going on a trip. He looked at me like I wasn't real, like seeing me there was an inconvenience. "Emily," he said, "I was gonna call." I asked, "What's going on?" I already knew, but I needed to hear him say it. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. And he did, with a breath that didn't even shake. "I'm moving in with Diane." My mom's best friend, my godmother, the woman who hosted every Thanksgiving, who taught me how to braid hair, who sat beside my mother at every chemo appointment 3 years ago. That Diane. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, counting how many people I had lost in one sentence. Mom's husband, her best friend, my father, my second mother. All of them, gone. And somehow, they'd walked away holding the house keys, the bank account, and the story. That was the moment I realized betrayal doesn't need strangers. It just needs someone close enough to know where your heart lives and someone selfish enough to set it on fire. If you've ever watched someone you love pretend you never mattered, hit subscribe. We tell the stories blood tried to bury. Before that moment, before the duffel bag, the hollow goodbye, the woman I used to call Aunt Diane, turning into a ghost in my life, I was the girl with the solid family. I use that word a lot. We weren't flashy, we weren't perfect, but we were solid. I'm Emily Thompson, only child, raised in Evergreen, Colorado. Dad was a construction foreman, came home smelling like drywall and dust, but he'd kiss my forehead before he even took off his boots. Mom, Karen, ran the church pantry on weekends and taught me how to budget grocery money like it was a skill passed down in our DNA. And Diane Whitman? She wasn't just Mom's best friend. She was part of the furniture of our lives. She and Mom met junior year of high school, became inseparable, then raised their kids side by side. Except I was the only child. Diane never had any. So she poured everything into me. She took me school shopping when Mom was sick, bought me a bracelet with both our initials, held my hand when I got rejected from my dream college, called herself my second mom. And I let her. Because we were family. Not by blood, but by years, by memories, by presence. There was even a stretch of time where we all lived on the same street. Christmas mornings blurred between our houses. Every birthday party featured both of them. Mom baking the cake, Diane helping decorate. And Dad, he was the anchor, the protector. He worked hard, fixed the leaky sink without being asked, took us on surprise weekend drives into the mountains. To me, my father was quiet, but dependable. Not emotional, but never absent. When I was little and scared of the thunder, he'd knock once on my door and say, "Storms pass, Em, just ride it out." I carried that phrase like armor. I didn't know he'd be the one to bring the storm. Looking back, there was no hint of what was coming. Not to me, not to Mom, not to anyone. People said we were one of the good families. You know, the kind that stayed out of trouble, showed up to everything, smiled in church, and never raised our voices in public. I was proud of that. Proud of us. I was 26, in grad school, engaged. I thought I'd gotten lucky, growing up with parents who loved each other, a childhood full of clean love, warm routines, no big drama, no pain with sharp corners. But now I know, some betrayals don't come with warning signs. They come wrapped in years of shared meals, old photo albums, and people who never looked like threats. You don't see the fall until you're already halfway down. The fall started slow and silent, like a crack in glass you don't notice until the whole thing shatters in your hand. There were signs, not big ones, just moments that felt off. Like the way Diane started showing up before Mom got home. She'd bring over pie or wine and say she was checking on Mark. Once I found them sitting on the back porch, laughing, her hand on his arm, his face turned toward hers in a way I'd never seen before. It wasn't flirty, it wasn't obvious, but it was new. I remember asking Mom, "Do you think Diane's been coming around a lot lately?" She shrugged. "She's just lonely, Em. You know how close we all are." And we were. That's what made it so easy to excuse. Diane had a key to our house. She'd been there the night I broke my arm in 6th grade. She and Dad had once driven 8 hours together to pick up a used washer for Mom when hers broke. This wasn't weird. It was normal. Until it wasn't. There was one night, late spring, I came home from college early. Didn't tell anyone. Dad was in the kitchen. Diane was there too. They jumped a little when I walked in. She said she was just dropping something for Mom, but Mom wasn't even home yet. There were 2 coffee cups on the table, still steaming. I didn't say anything, because saying something would have meant I thought something was wrong, and we weren't that kind of family. Then came the jokes. The ones Diane made about how Karen better hold on to that man, or Mark's the real catch around here. Everyone would laugh, even Mom. But I started to notice that Diane never really looked at Mom when she said those things. She looked at Dad. Another time, Mom hosted a potluck. She asked Diane to bring dessert, something simple. Diane showed up in a short, tight red dress. Everyone noticed, especially Dad. Still, I brushed it all off because who suspects their godmother? Who suspects their father? And the truth? I didn't want to lose what I thought I had. So I convinced myself that everything I was seeing was just noise, background static. Until one day, Diane posted a photo on Facebook, a blurry sunset from a cabin rental in Breckenridge. 3 days later, Dad posted a different photo. Same sunset, same view, different angle. I stared at the 2 images side by side, heart pounding. But I said nothing, because if I connected those dots, then I'd have to admit something real, and I wasn't ready. I didn't ask about the photos. I wish I had, but some questions feel too dangerous. Like if you say the words out loud, they become real. So I saved the screenshots, buried them in a folder on my phone I titled, "Maybe Nothing." And I pretended. For 2 months, I went along with the illusion that my father was still my father, that Diane was still family, and that the silence was safer than the truth. Until that afternoon. I had just driven home from campus, last-minute visit, my mom didn't know I was coming, but the front door was open. The house smelled like leaven polish and cheap cologne. There was a suitcase sitting by the door, and that silence again. That sickening, unreal silence that buzzes in your teeth. Dad was standing in the hallway, duffel in one hand, car keys in the other. He wasn't surprised to see me. He just sighed and said, "Emily, I was gonna call." I didn't move, didn't speak. Then he said it. "I'm moving in with Diane." There it was. No stumble, no shame, just the facts. Like I was a stranger being updated on someone else's life. I stared at him, at the man who taught me to ride a bike, who used to tuck a 20 into my backpack with a sticky note that said, "For snacks, don't tell Mom." The man who held my mother's hand during her biopsy. And now that man, my father, was holding a bag that meant he wasn't coming back. And worse, he was choosing her. Diane, the woman who sat at our Thanksgiving table every year, who picked out my prom dress, who once told me with tears in her eyes that I was the daughter she never had. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just asked, "Are you serious?" And he nodded. Once. Clean. Final. He said things like, "We didn't mean for it to happen. These things are complicated. You're an adult now. You'll understand someday." Understand what? How to burn down a family and walk away smiling? I asked him if Mom knew. He said yes. He said he told her that morning that they'd had the conversation and that he'd be back later for the rest of his things. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. I just stood on the porch, watching him walk past me with that bag, like he was just heading off on a work trip. As he pulled the door shut behind him, he paused, turned slightly, like he was going to say something. Maybe an apology. Maybe, "I love you." Maybe anything. But he didn't. He just left. And when I finally stepped inside, I found my mother sitting on the kitchen floor, still in her nightgown, still holding the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She looked up at me with eyes so empty I didn't recognize her. She didn't speak. She didn't sob. She just whispered, "I gave her everything, Emily." And so did he. I sat down on the floor beside her, not because I knew what to say, but because I didn't want her to be alone in that silence. The tile was cold, the air felt wrong, and my mom, the woman who raised me with a kind of quiet resilience that made pain look manageable, was shaking. She clutched a dish towel in her hand like she didn't even know she was holding it. Her voice, when it came again, was so soft I could barely hear it. "She was in our wedding, Emily." I knew that. Of course I knew that. But somehow hearing it out loud made the betrayal sharper. Mom looked up at me. Her eyes were glassy, distant. "She held my dress while I peed on my wedding day. And now she's living with him?" I nodded once, because what else was there to do? There's no playbook for this, no handbook titled, "When your husband leaves you for your best friend of 30 years. The next morning, she didn't get out of bed, didn't eat, didn't shower. She just laid there, one hand curled around an old wedding photo like it could protect her. And me? I called out of work. I turned off my phone. I sat in the hallway and cried like I was 10 years old again, begging God to make my parents stop fighting. Except there was no fight now, just aftermath. That same week, the bank called. Mom had gone in to freeze their joint savings, but most of it was gone. Dad had made quiet withdrawals over the last 2 months. He didn't clear it out all at once, no. He was smart. He planned it. 12,000 here, 5 there, another 15 under investment transfer. By the time Mom noticed, there was barely enough left to cover next month's mortgage. I asked her if she wanted to call a lawyer. She shook her head, said, "I don't want revenge.
I want sleep. That's when I knew it was worse than I thought. This wasn't heartbreak. It was collapse. Internal. Silent. Brutal. She stopped answering texts from friends, stopped going to church, stopped opening the blinds. Our house, once filled with sunlight and Diane's laugh and Mom's humming, became a tomb. And me? I stopped sleeping. I started checking the locks twice at night. I cried in the shower because that's the only place she couldn't hear me. I looked at family photos like they were crime scenes. How many moments had been lies? How many smiles were already breaking underneath? People started calling to check in, but they never stayed on the line long because nobody knows what to say when love ends like this. Some even defended him. Love is complicated. Maybe he was unhappy. Don't blame Diane. It's not all her fault. Not all her fault? She shared my baby photos on Facebook. She called herself my aunt. She cried when I left for college. And now she was wearing his t-shirts and cooking in his new condo? Love doesn't just happen. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And they chose it together while watching my mother unravel.
It happened on a Tuesday. The sky was gray. I remember that detail because I kept staring at it. Like if the clouds cracked open, something would finally make sense. But all I got was a ding on my phone. A text from Diane. I know you're hurting. I love you. Please don't shut me out forever. Forever? She wanted forgiveness with a side of comfort. Like I was supposed to forget she walked into our home with birthday gifts and left with the man who bought my first car? I didn't respond. I blocked her because some messages don't deserve answers and some relationships don't get rewrites. But I did text one person. Dad. I wrote, Mom hasn't gotten out of bed in 5 days. She's not eating. She looks gone. Do you even care? It sat on delivered for 6 hours. Then, just after midnight, he replied, I'm sorry she's struggling. I truly didn't mean to hurt anyone. But we all deserve to be happy. Don't let this tear us apart. Us? There was no us. There was me pulling my mother back from emotional death, and there was him playing house with a woman who used to braid my hair. That was the last time I messaged him. No drama, no paragraph, no warning. I blocked the number, deleted the thread, and sat there staring at my phone like it had finally stopped breathing lies. Because here's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It's not always loud. It doesn't always come with doors slamming or plates smashing. Sometimes it just stops. The calls stop. The explanations stop. The begging to be seen, understood, remembered stops. That was the moment I walked away. Not in rage, but in release. Not for revenge, but for survival. That was the last time I begged to be chosen. Some rooms don't deserve your presence, and some people don't deserve your silence. They deserve your absence. After that night, the world didn't change. There were no trumpets, no miracle apologies, no knock on the door with Dad sobbing in regret. The only thing that changed was me. I started waking up earlier. Not because I felt better, but because I couldn't stand the feeling of wasting another minute in a house where everything felt like a funeral. I made coffee, opened the blinds, pushed back against the quiet. Mom still moved like a ghost most days, but I started pulling her into the light, one habit at a time. I'd leave little notes on the fridge. Leftover soup, eat, or I'm calling Grandma. I dragged her to the library one afternoon. She didn't speak much, but she sat in the sunlight by the window and flipped through a cookbook. It was something. I didn't expect healing to look like that. I thought it would be loud, sudden, sharp, but it was small, soft, like watering dead plants out of spite and watching them green slowly despite everything. I went back to therapy, told the counselor everything, even the parts that made me feel pathetic, like how I still missed my dad, how I sometimes scrolled through Diane's old texts, wondering how she got so good at lying. The therapist nodded and said, missing someone doesn't mean you want them back. It just means their absence left a bruise. That made me cry in a way I hadn't in weeks, because it finally made sense. This wasn't about revenge or getting even. It was about not disappearing. I started working again, remotely, part-time. Saved money, cooked more. Mom took longer. She didn't want to talk about him. But one night, as we folded laundry, she said, "You're stronger than me." I told her no. I just had a reason to stay strong. You. She smiled, and for the first time since he left, I saw something flicker in her eyes that looked like belief. The kind that lives in bones, not words. Eventually, Mom sold the house. Too many ghosts in the walls. We moved into a smaller place, a little bungalow with chipped white paint and a wild garden. We painted the living room ourselves, hung up new pictures. None of them included him. On my birthday, she baked a cake from scratch. We sang off-key in the kitchen. She wore pink lipstick for the first time in a year. No one clapped. No one filmed it. But in that small, quiet moment, we had risen. We had survived the collapse and planted something new in its place. It didn't matter that no one cheered, because we weren't doing it for them. We were doing it for us. Healing isn't always visible, but one day, you wake up and realize you've stopped bleeding.
I used to think betrayal was something loud, explosive, obvious, something you'd see coming from miles away. But now I know it's quiet. It's the friend who hugs you while planning your funeral. It's the man who kisses your mother goodnight while texting another woman from the bathroom. It's the godmother who teaches you how to trust just so she can be the one to break it. What I know now is this: blood makes you related, but it doesn't make you loyal. And loyalty? That's not proven in holidays and hugs. It's proven in the moments when someone has the power to destroy you and chooses not to. My father had that power. Diane had that choice. And they both used it to burn the house down. And for what? A second chance at romance? Some version of freedom? The thrill of something new? Fine. But what they left behind wasn't just a woman with no husband, or a daughter with no father. They left behind a legacy. One built on cowardice and silence and selfishness dressed up as happiness. I used to ask myself why. Why would he do this? Why would she? But here's the truth I finally had to learn. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. And I decided I don't need to understand people who don't even try to be understood. I don't need an apology from someone who built a new life while leaving ashes in mine. I don't need to carry their story anymore. Because now I know, forgiveness isn't access. Peace isn't permission. And healing doesn't require their name to be spoken ever again.
If you're still listening, if any part of this felt like your life dressed in different names, then I want you to know something. You are not weak because you still miss them. You are not crazy for going through their old texts at 2 a.m., asking yourself what you missed. You are not broken because you still want answers you'll never get. And you are not wrong for walking away. Even if it was your dad, even if it was your best friend, even if it was someone everyone else still calls family. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with bruises. It comes with silence, with empty chairs, with holidays that hurt more than they heal. And that pain, it's not your fault. None of it is. Some betrayals come dressed as traditions. Don't let the bloodline drown your soul. I know it's hard to let go of people who gave you memories, but sometimes to protect your peace, you have to become your own home. And if you're in that place right now, the place where everything feels too quiet, too empty, too much, I want you to write 3 words below this video. Just 3. Not my fault. Because you deserve to be heard. And if no one else claps for your survival, I will.